I should. I'd be better if I thought I could. I'm a sucker for adrenaline, every villain is. Everybody trying to change my ways, but I live just to see you break. I'm a sucker for adrenaline, every villain is. You take the high road, I'll take the low. Everyone lies cause everyone knows. Feels good to be, feels good to be, feels good to be a little bit bad.
Do you remember getting in trouble in school? I certainly do, and I don't know what kind of trouble it was for you, but for me, one of the things that I used to have to do all the time is to write rules. Now, I don't know if you've had this experience of just writing something over and over and over again in the hopes that it would change your behavior or make an impact upon your heart and mind. But for me, it was pretty fruitless. And over the years, coming up through elementary school, I can remember all of the different things we used to try to do to get out of writing rules, no matter how many it was that you had to write or what you had to write. There were all these little tips and tricks, and maybe you tried some of them too. You bust out the ruler and draw down the line I-W-I-L-L. And so it just made it just way less effective as a punishment or a learning tool. Or maybe you tried to write down something shorter than what the teacher gave you to write. A friend of mine and I always used to end up writing I know foo. As I will not fool around in class because it disrupts the learning and is disrespectful to the substitute. That may have all been true, but I know foo. I also remember trying to fish out the rules that we would hand to the teacher after he threw them in the garbage, and we'd put them back in a folder and try to bring them back out and recycle them next time that we were assigned to write some rules. So it definitely was not a fruitful educational learning experience that impacted me in the heart, the mind, and in the behavior. There are a couple things that I want to take away from this is that we go through life with rules, and sometimes those rules that we're living by are not communicated to other people. Sometimes we break those rules. Sometimes other people break our rules. And so there's a couple of things that you might want to consider is, number one, do you even know what those rules are? Have you sat down? Have you thought about them? Have you verbalized the rules you're going to live by? And sometimes, maybe, are you communicating those rules with the people that matter to you? I can think back to this time when my wife and I were planning to get married, and we had read a book about the questions you need to answer and talk about before you get married. And one of the things that suggested to do was to make a list of all your expectations. Really, these are rules. And all the expectations you have of one another, and then to sit down, exchange lists, and then kind of just have it out, right? So I made my list and she made hers, and we sat down, and there was just this huge fight that ensued over one or two things. Now, the fight wasn't really that big, and it didn't really last that long because we ended up laughing. And the laughter came out of this idea that our expectations and the reality that was going to happen in our marriage is something that was much better that we found out in advance, but at least they were out in the open and we got a chance to talk about them. And although, our selfish pride and maybe some traditionalism popped up in our minds, we had an opportunity to work it out because it was out there on the table. And then we had a chance between the two of us to establish some rules, some goals, some values, whatever you want to call them, that we were going to live by, that we're going to govern our marriage, our relationship, our time. One of the challenging things that happens in life is sometimes we're going through life living by these rules that someone else has written in our head. Expectations from our parents, maybe from society that we put on ourselves that aren't realistic, or maybe they're just unspoken, and so we can't challenge them. And so sometimes we might need to take a step back and think about the rules that are governing our behavior, our choices, our lifestyle, and then to see, are those the choices we want to make? Are those the rules we want to live by? There comes a point in time when you're going to have to break your own rules. And if you think about that in advance, when that time comes, you aren't struggling with something that you've set in stone. You know that there are certain conditions that come along with which you're going to break those rules. Last summer, I had the opportunity to go, all expenses paid, with a stipend, to a conference in Dallas, Texas. Now, unfortunately for me, it was also in like July and August, so super hot. But one of the commitments that I made when my daughter was born is that I wasn't going to allow work to infringe upon the life, the time, and the relationship energy that I have for my family. So the opportunity to go to this conference was pretty awesome, and considering that everything was going to be paid for and I was going to get a stipend to go, it was one of those things that we had to sit down. Now, my daughter wasn't very old. It was in the summer when I normally have free time, and I'm home dedicated to spend time with her. But it was just an opportunity that we had to talk it out and say, okay, you know what? This is work, but it's a chance for you to advance your skills, to maybe get away, to refresh your craft. And I think we need that. But you see, it didn't happen in isolation. I didn't come home and say, hey, I'm going to Dallas. You're going to have to figure out how to take care of Addie, and I'm out, you know. It actually bumped up against one of those rules. We had a conversation, and this was a time to break the rule, and I got a lot out of it. And maybe those things will come in your life too. The question that you have to ask yourself is it a one-off or is it a pattern? And if somebody loves you enough, they're going to tell you when you're breaking those rules time and time again. And you might say, oh, it's for a short period of time. But what happens when that time is up? Is there a time where somebody can call you on it and say, hey, this is not what we talked about? And the goal here is that anytime you're willing and able to have a conversation about the values, the choices, the priorities that are going to govern your life in relationship with other people is a win. Even if you don't come out getting what you want, the fact that you had a chance to talk it out, knowing that you love someone else or they care for you, whatever it might be, you're going to benefit from that environment. So let me just give you one of my quick funny stories. I absolutely hate being late. And this is one of those things where I have a rule in my life that I struggle with. When I was a kid, I'm the youngest of four. For parents to get 4 kids packed into a ginormous station wagon and book it across town to make it to church on Sunday morning was always a struggle, and we would always walk in late. And I'm talking like quiet church. We'd come in the back. Everybody in that place knew we had arrived. And although we tried to sneak in the back section, it was always just a matter of time before somebody, caught us. And that eye contact for me as a little kid, I was embarrassed. And I just sort of made this internal rule that I'm not going to be late to church. And I'll flip the script here. My wife, on the other hand, again, big family, but her parents, the goal was to never be late to church. So her father would be early, like 30 minutes early, and they would sit there quietly, and she's bored out of her mind, frustrated, whatever, as a little kid, that they're there early. Why do we have to show up early when it doesn't start for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever? So here we are. My wife wants to show up, we'll just say on time, and I definitely want to be early. And so we struggled with this for a long time. I'm frustrated because I'm ready to go, and she's frustrated because she doesn't want to be early. And it was just this idea that we came to the conclusion that since we don't have to go across town, sometimes it would be better to just drive separately. We both get what we want. Yeah, we spend a little bit more gas, but that issue doesn't come up when we're angry at each other at a time where we're supposed to be reflective. And the point that I want to make there is sometimes our rules are not written by us, or not directly. We don't realize that our experiences in our past, our childhood, maybe with another person, are actually forming these internal rules that if we don't take a chance to step back and to say, hey, what are the rules that are governing my life? How did they get there? Do I want to keep them? Then they're going to come out, and we're going to be frustrated, we're going to be angry, we're going to be irritated at other people that don't respect that rule, when maybe we never communicated it or never evaluated whether that rule should even be in the game. Right? Now, I use the word game because I think it's interesting that every year the NFL takes time to sit back and review if rules are working for the benefit of the players, the speed of the game, the safety, whatever it might be. They actually take time to do that. And one of the things that I really hoped in starting this channel was that I could give you something to chew on, something to sit back, to take time, and to reflect. Now again, I don't know if you ever had any discipline in class, but imagine you've just been booted out into the hallway or got your dunce cap on or whatever it might be. Are you going to evaluate, or is it just going to be like those rules were, where you're just going through the motions? I'll just go ahead and get these done, but I don't plan on changing. The days of my youth when somebody would expose something that needed to change in my life and I'd get angry or I'd get defensive, I just don't have time for that anymore, and I really hope that you don't either. If you're here, I'm assuming you don't. So take a few minutes, sit back, think about it. Are there rules that govern your life? Do you want to keep them there? And then on the flip side, do you want to write some new ones? Do you want to sit with a person that you love, that you're doing life with, the people that matter to you most, and ask them, hey, what kinds of rules are we going to live by? All right, guys, well, I really do hope that that is helpful. I think this could be really powerful for you and for somebody else. So if there's somebody that you know that might benefit from this video, it might impact their life, please share it with them, tag them in the comments, drop down there any of the goofy things that you went through in school, punishments or disciplinary action, anything like that. And probably like the one rule that you've chosen to live by. I want to know what that is down in the comments. I look forward to the conversation there. What was that for?